don't like this.
Go ahead, man. Get it off your chest.
I don't like her at all. I cannot stand her at all. Like, the show was one thing, but now reading the books and seeing how things are like playing out, she gotta go. Like, I can't stand this woman at all. No way, shape, or form.
Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of the New Block Nerds podcast. I'm your host, Chris, aka Prince, with the homie Darron, aka Medic Grizzly. Darron,
what's good?
How you doing, man?
I'm cool. I'm just a little hot right now. That woman gotta go, bro.
Tell the listeners why you hot, man.
Listen, Lady Stark, whatever you want to call her, bro. Catelyn, she gotta go. She is literally like, she is not a good mom at all. She's not a good mother, period. Nor is she a good wife. I'll say it. She is not a good wife, a mother. She always complains all the time. She always got something to say about everything. Woman, like, know your place. Like, no offense to that. Like, back in the time period, like, this is Ned. This is Ned who we're talking about. And you talking to him like he's like one of your kids. What? You got to go. I'm sorry. She got to go.
So, listeners, Darron, he's a little upset. We on the New Block Nerds podcast are not huge Catelyn fans. I don't hate Catelyn per se. Hate is a very strong word. I don't hate Catelyn. I do think that Catelyn thinks that she is savvier than she is.
She thinks she's the king.
She thinks, and in her defense, Ned is not a political savvy person whatsoever, right? Politically, Ned is challenged. Let's just say that, right? So I understand where she's coming from throughout, the story, where she feels like she needs to kind of pick up the slack a little bit, right? And this second Catelyn chapter early on in the book is, coming off the heels of the Jon chapter where he meets Tyrion for the first time and everything like that. So I'm assuming this is either the same night. She and Ned are hanging out in their bedchamber. Ned just got done waxing that ass. And there's a lot of really good exposition in here about the history of Winterfell, the castle, and like where it was built. And, we've already been given a bunch of info about how cold it is up north and summer snows and stuff like this. So you're kind of probably wondering as a reader, like, how do these people even survive up here? Well, it's because our castle was built on hot springs. So it kind of warms the castle. And we get a little bit of exposition from there. So getting to the meat and potatoes of this chapter, because it's only 10 pages, I think. But there's a lot in it. There's a lot of background history about Ned's brother Brandon, which we'll get into in a couple of minutes here. But Darron, again, a first-time reader, I kind of want to get your overall thoughts on like the chapter and kind of like setting the stage and when she gets that letter, how quickly things turn from, me having quality time with my husband. Remember, this is from Catelyn's point of view, right? So she's like, me having quality time with my husband. Maybe I can give him another son. Everything's looking great. And then bad news comes.
So, Game of Thrones is like the first book I ever read that has the POV chapters. So it shows everyone has their own story, but it actually breaks down in detail. And this is the point of view of Catelyn. And then it also does a really good job of showing us an intimate moment. They're showing them being very vulnerable. It's showing that, hey, these are husband and wife, just made love. And the pillow talk, you could say. And then you see how you're more vulnerable when you express your feelings and stuff like that. And then just see how it highlights that Ned was not really, like you said, savvy when it comes to making decisions, and how he's blurred out that, hey, I'm going to tell him no. I'm not going there to be the hand of the king. And then she's like, you have to. And almost to the point of realizing that I know you think he's still your friend, but he's still the king. Like, he has another responsibility. He went all the way down here, and how serious this is for you to tell him no. Ned's like, my responsibility is here. So just seeing showing the whole savviness and the awareness of what's really going on and how big a picture this is, Catelyn's definitely hands to toe. She's way better at this than he is when it comes to that game. And it shows that in this actual small dialect of what's going on. So it progresses over, and then it just shows like Ned all cares about his family. He cares about family
Mm-hmm.
and is passionate about his own land. He doesn't care about what happens down south, east, west. He doesn't give a darn.
Not even a
But then
little
you
bit.
see, you see Catelyn's like, I don't really want to be here, but I have to be here and I'm obligated. And it goes into the whole sample you mentioned, the brother, how I'm only with you, Ned, because I had to be with you. It wasn't by choice. And then Ned's like, his reaction was showing emotion, like, dang, that cuts deep. You don't have to say all that, but I know it's true. And then it reminds him that, well, hey, my brother would know about this. He would know what to do because that was always his play, his position. Ned never had to learn that game of
Right.
knowing how to be politically basically articulate, knowing what's going on and actually being aware of like, hey, you're the king, you're the queen, you're the knight. I'm supposed to do this, do that. He never had to do that. So it was cool
Right.
just seeing that dynamic back and forth. How did you feel about that, knowing you read all the books and stuff and then seeing how it just highlighted that he wasn't there?
Yeah, I think it's a good point you bring up about her bringing up Brandon.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's, and Ned kind of alludes to it, just like Brandon, yes, Brandon. Like it strikes me as that's not the first time she's brought him up in the 15 years they've been together, right? Again, Catelyn is much savvier than Ned, and you can tell that she's watching his reaction to everything that she says, Maester Luwin says, and how he's processing everything, right? So she understands her husband. She loves him very much. Like there's no question about that. But she knows how to and what to say and when to say it and how to say it to get the reaction that she wants out of him, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where, to your point, where we were talking off air about you not liking Catelyn as like in her wife role, because she's, even though she does love Ned, that doesn't mean that she doesn't sometimes manipulate him in the ways that she wants him to behave or wants him to act, right? So bringing up Brandon, his dead brother, like of course that's going to bring back and I feel like she's guilt tripping him, right, into accepting this position that he doesn't want whatsoever. But before we get into that, I just want to kind of cover a little bit about like when Maester Luwin does kind of disturb them and comes in and delivers the news and everything like that. Catelyn she's quickly putting this stuff together, right, in the way that like Ned is just not, right? And this is just one of many, many examples of other people around Ned looking deeper into a message where Ned's just kind of taking it at face value, just like, well, what's going on? Somebody just tell me exactly what's going on. Where Kat is, she's putting together, okay, no one saw this rider come in. It's got my sister's seal on it. The note was hidden in a false bottom in the box. And it's written in a coded language. So she already knows before she even reads the words, this is serious. She even says to Ned before she even breaks the seal, I know there's something terrible in here. There has to be. Whoever went to this great lengths to send us this message, there has to be something terrible within, right? And then she talks about the secret language that her and her sister used to have growing up. And then, of course, she drops the bomb on them that her sister is accusing the Lannisters of murdering her husband and former Hand of the King, Lord Jon Arryn of the Eyrie.
And Jon Arryn plays a big part in Ned's life and everything else. So it like almost like sends the emotional like blast. So Ned has to process everything because it's going through quickly. Catelyn's already up there. She knows what's going on. And then on top of that, yeah, by the way, he was murdered. Catelyn's like, that's my sister's husband. I already didn't like the Lannisters. So that already adds more fuel to the fire. Versus Ned's like, he was murdered? Like he just stuck right there now, like his little pit of knowing one baby step at a time. It's almost like JV basketball versus varsity. It was two different people playing this game. And also just having the master there and him looking like, I want to step in. Should I leave now? Should I not stay in this conversation? Because he's like,
do I need to? I don't really need to be here. But Catelyn's like, no, you're the maester. We're gonna need your counsel regardless. So you stay here.
And bro's like we just pictures. They just made love. So the atmosphere of the room, the lack of clothing, everything is still naked, happening.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm delivering this message, but I gotta go. And she just didn't want to go. So this tells you more the manipulation she has on this entire thing and shows the steps of the game. Like she's playing chess. She knows that, okay, we
Mhm.
have a secret coded one. For her to send this, she already knew if we were to be caught, it's instant death.
Yeah.
She made sure she knew that. On the back, it's like she went through a lot of loops, just and holes, just to get this to happen. And for
Right.
her to read it and be so calm about it, like, yeah, this is serious, Ned. You have to do something, Ned. You have to
Yeah.
go now. You have to be the head start. He just told you, woman, he doesn't want to go.
Yeah,
Just
and,
told
and,
you that.
and you know, and I want to get into how she kind of uses this as leverage to convince Ned to take the job.
Yeah.
But before that, I do want to give Kat a little bit of credit because I do really like, even though she gives Arya a lot of crap about not being ladylike, I do love that throughout Kat's journey, she's a realist at the end of the day. Like I do think that Catelyn can really level with people. Like perfect example, you said, you know, her and Ned just finished having sex and she gets up and like burns the letter in the fireplace completely naked, and Maester Luwin is like sitting there like trying to like avert his eyes and whatever, and Ned's like, yo, what the fuck, what are you doing, you're naked, like what are you doing? And she's just like, relax, Maester Luwin has delivered like 6 kids, he's seen everything, it's all right, let's not be modest here, okay? Which I appreciate, because it's just like, this isn't about maintaining lady, like we're in our bedchamber, you know what I mean? Like there's an actual issue here, and it's not my tits hanging out. Like we've got some other shit that we really need to deal with. But then, you know, going back to just classic Catelyn, she uses that as a premise to goad Ned into like feeling guilty if he doesn't take the job now, right? Because he's like, oh, you said Robert is like your brother. Would you leave your brother surrounded by Lannisters? And I'm just like, oh my god, of course. Of course he's going to say no. Of course I wouldn't.
This is why I don't like her. This is why I don't like her. He just said he's like my brother, as in saying, hey, it's no big deal if I say I don't want to be hand of the king. You take that and flip it as in, do you want your brother around a bunch of Lannisters? This is accusations. We don't know if it's really true or not, that they supposedly murdered like your quote unquote dad. But you want your best friend, your brother, to go with them? Like, you're playing these mind games, bro. And you're supposed to be the wife? I don't like you. I don't like you. Go ahead.
Yeah,
man.
it's kind of dirty how she plays, but I think Ned kind of plays back a little bit, because you start to see them. It's really kind of like a negotiation, talking about how they're going to split up the kids and stuff like that. Where I feel like Ned kind of puts his foot down a little bit, and there's a bit of a back and forth, and we'll get to the end of the chapter, which I know you're eager to get to, but like, because Catelyn's whole thing was, look, not only did he bestow these honors on you, he's also saying that he's going to make our daughter a queen. Is that so bad to want, Ned? And that's where we were talking about this off air, where I feel like Catelyn's ambition got in the way, right? Because Ned even told her, you know, Sir Roderick, he was down there in the yard yesterday with Rob and Prince Joffrey, and he said they didn't get along, and I got an uneasy feeling about this. And he was getting ready to say, like, Prince Joffrey, he's the crown prince, but he's
a piece of
kind of a douche. He's kind of a douche, right? So, and I get it. I understand, like you said, in this system they live in this like system of government, someone asking your daughter to marry the crown prince is the best thing anyone can fucking offer you. You're
like catapulting to the front of the line. Like, it's huge.
Yeah. I mean, like, their kids, like, you guys are going to be grandparents to a future king.
Yes. The bloodlines mean so much.
Right. So I get it. I get it. But, you know, this is also a system where we've seen people have that kind of ambition and it end terribly for them. Right. In all kinds of different ways. Right. So I understand her, you know, seeing that as like a huge selling point. But I think Ned kind of humbles her in a good way here, because then he's like, all right, well, if I'm going down, Maester Luwin, I need you to, you know, put Rob in all your councils. He's gonna need to learn how to be Lord of Winterfell, and I'm not gonna be here for him. I'm gonna be down in the South, cleaning up Robert's shit. I'm also gonna take the girls with me, right? And Catelyn kind of feels some kind of way about that, but she thought to herself, obviously Sansa has to be down there because she's betrothed to the Crown Prince. That makes sense. And Arya needs some fine tuning because she's a little wild, and I think being in the court in the South will maybe straighten her out a little bit. She's wrong. Arya's going to be Arya no matter where the fuck she goes. But
savage level.
And then they talk about Rickon, about how Rickon is so young and he needs to stay here. But the interesting part is when she brings up Bran, when she was like, not Bran, never Bran. And so it's very clear who Catelyn's favorite is.
Absolutely.
Rob is her firstborn. It's her, the oldest son. He's going to be heir to Winterfell, all this other kind of stuff. But I feel like that is George R. R. Martin kind of signaling to us, making Bran Catelyn's favorite, that he's incredibly important.
Which motivates people to do dumb things sometimes.
Right.
In the future, we're speaking of foreshadowing things. But what she mentioned, Bran, and you see Ned rebuttal, like, well, he's basically the glue. He makes things work. Like, you need someone there that can balance off. You have a jerk on one side. You have a promising young gentleman on the other side. You need a person in the middle that can balance it too. And that's what Bran is. Catelyn was all about, I got my picks over here. My picks over here. Y'all can do what y'all want. I'm about to have you a future granddaughter's going to be king bloodline. I'm happy. Do what y'all want to do. I'm okay with it. And it's really remind you that, like, are you representing the Starks? Like, does your last name currently matter? And then you mentioned the brother also, again, has you never wanted to be with Ned. Now you're using Ned to get what you want at the end of it, that you want to be glorified, to be honored, to be. And then you also hate the Lannisters. You hate them because they are what you want to be. That's what it kind of feels like. But on top of that, Ned, I want you to go.
They're also assholes too, though. Like, objectively, they're assholes.
She is definitely, and my person is birds of flock together. That's how I feel about that one. But like I said, girls, I gotta go. Okay, I understand that. But Bran can't go. But then we get to Rob. Yeah, Rob, he has to go. I don't want him anywhere near this. Like,
you mean John?
John, I'm sorry, John. And John, he's not my son. He has to go. What? Like,
yeah. So this is the reason why a large portion of the Game of Thrones fandom hates Catelyn. Because we all love John, and she treats John like shit any chance she gets. Any chance she gets. Right?
Doormat every day.
And she gives us a little bit of insight to the way that she thinks and the way that Ned feels about John, which I think is very important early on in this book. So we just talked about how Catelyn is very manipulative towards Ned. She, tries to guilt trip him into things. But she says in the book, there's one time that Ned had ever frightened her. Yes. It was, she was hearing rumors about Ned and Ashara Dayne, who book readers will know is the sister of Sir Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning. Apparently, the rumors that Catelyn were hearing were that after Ned had defeated Sir Arthur Dayne at the Tower of Joy and Lyanna died, he took Arthur's sword, Dawn, back to Starfall where it belonged. And there's a little bit of history between Ashara Dayne and Ned, which we don't really have time to get into today, but
got a little bit of time, right?
Okay, so
let's get into it.
So the background is back when the Mad King was still in power, they held a great tourney at Harrenhal, right? During this tourney, pretty much everyone in the realm was there. Anyone who mattered was there. And then there's the whole theory behind the Night of the Laughing Tree, which we can get into at maybe a later episode. But as it relates to Ashara Dayne, she was there, of course, and she danced with a couple of prominent people. She danced with Sir Barristan Selmy. She danced with Ned. Now, this was back when they were much younger. Brandon was still living, so he was still betrothed to Catelyn. And so Ned and Ashara apparently took a liking to one another, right? one thing leads to another. And of course, years later, when Ned comes home with this bastard child, people were making rumblings in the castle that it is a Chardaine's child. When she as in Catelyn, finally worked up the courage to ask him about whether those rumors were true, the only thing Ned told her was, "Don't ever ask me about John.
With this, whoo,
he is of my blood, and that's all you need to know. But I will learn where you heard a Chardaine's name." And she said from that day forward, no one in the castle ever spoke of a Chardane again.
The book quote, "The whispers cease." Like, you basically, everyone knows that, like, he went out, found who it was, gather his men. Hey, listen, y'all want to keep talking that talk? It's done. Like, don't say a word about it.
It's done.
When Ned gets serious, he gets down to business. Everybody knows that. So seeing her manipulation and having the courage to even ask that question, again, during intimate times, she's clever. She's very clever. Don't ask that question. I'm not. I may be naive in some things, but some things don't push me on. I'm still Ned.
And it's so telling that was the one time that Catelyn ever felt frightened by Ned.
Yeah,
because in this setting, she's throwing stuff at him and challenging him in front of the Maester about what he should do, about what he shouldn't do, and stuff like that. And Ned kind of has to put his foot down. Like, she's like, "No, I don't want to stay here." And he's like, "Tough." And it's just like, and she even says in here in a tone that made it clear that there was going to be no argument about this, right? So they're talking about John. What's going to happen to John? Is he going to stay here? And Catelyn is pretty much just like, "Look, he's your son, not mine. I will not have him here."
And the crazy thing about that is that she took this opportunity. We went from it starting, and you think the picture is about, hey, Ned wants to stay with his family, to her now saying, well, my sister's husband was killed, to, oh, you have to go protect the king, to now it comes down to even more deeper layers like, hey, he's your bastard. You hurt me. I don't want him here. I don't want to see him. And then she even mentions in the book that John looks more like a Stark than anybody else. So that even like makes her feel even more like
he's eating her alive inside.
It is the fact that she has to like look at this dude knowing that, hey, we had a war, came back. He was already in the crib before she even got back. Like, these things, like, you normally historically you do not do. Ned, when it comes to John, there is no games. There's no questions. Whatever I want with John's going to happen. Then you take this opportunity and say, yo, he got to go too. What?
And I'm so glad you brought up that he looks more like a Stark than any of the other kids, because that's the part that really fucks her up inside the most, right? Because she even says, before she even talks about what John looks like, she was like, look, I understand. Men in our world, they have bastards all the time. He was at war. Yeah. Like, he didn't know if he was ever going to come home. If in between battles, he's got needs. Like, she was like, basically, like, I get it. You know what I mean? I get it. But she was in Riverrun the whole time during the war. She wasn't even in Winterfell. So for her to have had Robb at Riverrun and be there for the entirety of the war, and by the time the war is over and she finally makes her way up to Winterfell, who, remember, at this point, her and Ned got married. He stayed for a fortnight, which is about 2 weeks, and then left for a year, over a year, or however long Robert's Rebellion lasted, right? The next time she sees him in Winterfell, he's got another child, right?
Yes.
And so it's all those things layered up, right? It's, I didn't even know you, right? We already had a child together, and you went off and had another child. But not only that, you brought the boy to Winterfell before your heir even was in Winterfell. Yes. And as they got older, they were close. Like, Robb and John are super close. But the fact that John looks like a traditional Stark, the dark hair, the gray eyes, the face structure, everything is so classic Stark. And Robb was very, very much like a Tully, the curly auburn hair, all that kind of stuff that ate her alive inside, because she could not look at this living, breathing example of Ned's alleged
Alleged.
infidelity.
It just was like a daily reminder,
Mhm.
and on top of that, it definitely stained their relationship. So
Yeah.
when it came down to the point of, it was an easy choice for Captain. Like, he has to go. He cannot be here. Um, I don't want any chances of anyone coming here or any heirs. Like, she don't want nothing to do with him. Potentially, it's not even think about it in deeper level, bro. We're gonna go to eventually where he ends up going, but she wanted to make sure that her bloodline was secure.
Yep.
John was a problem in that whole story. So that's another reason why she don't want him here at all. Like,
Yep.
go and do your own thing somewhere else. She quotes on and say, "Hey, your king, I heard he has bastards all over the place," but they're never allowed to the meetings because basically Ned was concerned about, hey, when you come down there, what's going to happen to him? Well, apparently your best friend, the king, has a bunch of them. Nothing happens to them. He'll be just fine. That's the most savage thing you can do.
Right.
Is say,
Just like, I
hey,
don't give a shit what happens to
get
him.
the hell
Fuck
out
him.
of here.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, and again, in a vacuum, this is why we don't like Cat,
At all.
because John's one of our favorites and she treats him like shit. And that's not something that's unique to us. I feel like that is widely accepted in the fandom.
Mm-hmm.
And by no means am I saying that Catelyn is a terrible character. She's a great character. She does a lot of questionable things, and as we continue to get through the books, especially once Rob marches off to war, there's a lot of things that she does that are highly questionable. And you could argue,
Can I say it?
you could argue that
Can I say
she holds a lot of the blame for the way that things go.
She is absolutely to blame. Absolutely to blame. I am excited. I'm reading more of these books. All the TV show's my only main reference I had. So of course, like, getting more into it now and getting more details. She's someone that next chapter she can go, and I would probably stand up and applaud. Like, that's how much she has to get out of here, bro. And then knowing that she's gonna play like, she's just bad for business, bro. She's just so bad for business. Like, you don't want her around because she's only going to make the selections that benefit her in the long run. She don't care about she cares about her particular liking of the kids or her favorites. Everyone else can kick rocks. So, with all due respect, kick rocks. She can go. Next chapter. Hope she's just booted. I know she's not, but I hope she's booted.
Yeah, it's tough, man, because Catelyn is so integral to the story, especially because we don't have any POVs from Rob. So I feel like that is a lot of her insight is watching a king from afar, right? Like, think about it. We don't have any POVs from Robert either. So we don't have the POV chapters of kings. The only person that we have a POV chapter that's in like a real position of power is Daenerys throughout these books. Well, in short, because Rob and Robert were always doomed to begin with. The story required them to not make it but so far. I also think it's honestly kind of, it works really well having not the king's POV, but someone close to the person in charge, watching them kind of process things, not really knowing what they're thinking, right? Because then that person, their POV, they become us, right? Because we're reading it the same way. I feel like some of the events wouldn't hit as hard if we knew everything Rob was thinking. If we knew the decisions that he was going to make, it would be, I feel like the story wouldn't be as good, right? Like, I feel like having the mystique of Catelyn and when she's talking to Rob and his war councils, not knowing what decision he's going to go with, it leaves all of us tense, right? Because she's tense. She's looking at her son, who's 15, march off to war, right? So we feel that tension reading her thoughts. Versus, I feel like it would affect us differently if we were in the thoughts of Rob, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. So last question before we get out of here. How did you feel when you saw Catelyn's, like, almost like she rejoiced, like she was so happy when the wall was mentioned for John? Like, how did you feel about that?
I mean, that she was a prick initially, but At the same time, Jon had already expressed that he wanted to go to the Wall. Maester Luwin said as much. But again, like you said, Catelyn doesn't care about any of that. She just cares that he's going to be out of her hair, and going to the Wall is the best place in her eyes for him, because then he won't have a family, and none of his kids could ever rival her kids for any potential kind of inheritance of the North, which is so sad because Jon would never. Jon would have never. He would have never done nothing to hurt Robb. If Jon was still around, I mean, let's be honest, he would have died at the Red Wedding too with the rest of them. But so thank God he didn't.
That's a good point.
Thank God he didn't go.
That's a good point right there.
But it's just it just kind of goes to show you where Catelyn's mind and her thought process is, like what we talked about it earlier about like her ambition. So she's projecting her ambition onto Jon's. Jon doesn't want to be Lord of Winterfell. Even throughout the books, when he becomes Lord Commander, he doesn't want to be Lord Commander. He doesn't want any of the power that people just keep giving him. So for her to kind of project her own insecurities or ambition onto Jon, thinking that like he might one day challenge Robb for the right to rule the North, is just, that says more about Catelyn than it does about Jon.
It just reminds me of like how you mentioned POVs and how like this whole chapter and how basically Catelyn's point of view for Robb, and then how she was telling the story from afar. Right. And it also tells you how she knew the kids and what they were responsive to, but how blind she was to Jon because of who he represented and what she thought she knew about what's going on. It almost gave her like the blind spot in the family household where this dude could have been an ally. He could have been your right-hand man, but you chose to shun him because you just had so much ill will inside your heart.
Yep.
And that came in backfired on you later on.
Yeah. So
these freaking books are amazing, dude.
The books are amazing. I mean, we just spent a half hour talking about a 10-page chapter.
Yeah.
And that's just, again, man, I'm probably will say it every time we do a Game of Thrones chapter. It's just the brilliance of George R.R. Martin's writing, man. The man is a literary genius, man. He's incredible. But this is the second Catelyn chapter. Many more to come. So Darron, hang in there.
Come on, man.
But next we have Arya, which is one of my favorite characters. So it's her first POV chapter. So excited to excited to cover her. But
I'm gonna start doing a countdown for Catelyn's chapters, bro. Like, you gonna see me? I might have like a little hat, like a little celebration when I know that this time is coming. They look at the podcast like, yo, why is like D Grizz have all this stuff on? You wanna know why? Because today's a celebration.
And no, well, I hear you, but the end of Catelyn's chapters is also,
I know. Maybe when you start reading that one part, I'll put the hat on and I take it off and go sad again.
And it's, you know what? But before we get out of here, I got to speak on that because I feel like I've read these books through like 3 times and I've watched the show a couple of times. Every time I'm like reading through the books, and the more I read them back, the more I start seeing the signs of like things not going Robb's way. And every time reading the books, I'm just like, it's almost like I'm trying to will the words to change. And I'm like, no, it's not going to happen this time. It's not going to happen this time. Why don't y'all see this coming? You know what I mean? And it's just like, oh my God, I'm just.
And who's the cause
of that again? It
stresses me out.
It stresses me out. But anyways, we got a long whiles before we get there. So, you got anything else, man? We got Arya next time. I'm excited about that.
No, I'm just excited, man. This is really, really excited. This was a lot of fun. I always enjoy these chapters because I'm learning, and it's cool. It's really cool.
Good. Well, guys, if you guys haven't checked out our other chapters, I know Darron has set up a playlist on YouTube. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, definitely go back and check out the earlier chapters. We will be back to do every chapter in this book. So stick with us. It's going to be a long journey, but I think you guys will enjoy it. Darron, you got anything else?
I might have a gray beard by then. Nothing, man. Peace and love.
All right, man. We'll catch you guys on the next one.
All right.